All right, everybody. Welcome back to the Unlock podcast. We are three business owners from across the globe, as everyone probably knows by now. But I think all of us are in the great country of the US of A right now currently.
Ooh.
So I'm back here in my sauna, and Lars is in a different type of sauna in Utah. And
I am in St. George's, Utah, in a stress-induced sauna at the moment. Yes.
What are you doing in St. George's?
Well, I'm here playing golf with a group of guys. This is quite a little place here in St. George's. It's a small little town, but there's golf courses absolutely everywhere in Red Rock, and it's pretty cool. But I can tell you the Airbnb Wi-Fi situation isn't great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we have that at times.
I think we planned this podcast about 40 minutes ago. So considering that, a lot had to happen between then and now.
You don't have to give everybody the behind the scenes. Yeah.
Beaves, can you edit that out, please?
This has been on the books. This is all planned and prepared.
All planned. And hey, we should talk about the PGA Championship, I think, is on right now. Is this a golf podcast? I never remember.
You can make it one. Might as well.
It is partially that at times. You know, one of the cool things we just before this recording got an email. I don't know if you've seen it yet, Lars, but we got another email from Uncle Glenn, which is cool. Found out that he has an aversion to the color yellow. Haven't got the full story on it yet, but need to dig into that because that just sounds very intriguing.
Bring out your yellow shirts for the next episode.
Ate some snow that was yellow once, and he's been mad ever since. I'm not sure Glenn's even seen snow before. Or is he San Diego?
I think he was born and raised in Colorado.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Where was he?
Yeah. But he actually called out a previous episode that we did from technician to CEO and was pretty happy with some of the conversation that happened there. So the reason I brought that up was just as a reminder. Uncle Glenn gave the previous episode, Tech to CEO, a 3-star rating on a scale of 1 to 3 stars. So if you want to go check that out, he will.
He used a 3-star rating.
No, I came up with that one.
Yeah, that was because that's a dumb scale. It's a dumb scale that's used by dumb people. So
anyways, you should go check that out. That's previous episode. All of them are available if you go to our website at unlockedpodcast.com. You can find all the information there, just as a quick reminder. And the blog, yes. Very excited about the blog.
Yes. I'm excited for today's topic. Today we are talking about managing sales activities, keeping sales going in the right direction. I've had some conversations with Chad about this offline and figured it would be a good to learn about today for our listeners. So to get started, want to talk a little bit about what we currently have for sales team, just to give some people some perspective. I think we all kind of have a little bit different setups, but Chad, why don't you start? How do you structure sales in your organization, and how does that look?
We have 4 full-time salespeople. That the only responsibility that they have. Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And our go-to-market strategy. So one of those is a dedicated end user rep. So he is only focused on going out and driving new opportunities, meeting with a specific vertical markets. And the other 3 that we have currently are sharing more of the service requests that turn into quotes and managing relationships that we have with existing customers already. So they're processing existing opportunities and looking for new opportunities with our existing customers on a weekly basis. So they manage that through a queue. The expansion of that down the line will be additional sales reps located at each of our additional branches to have that localized representation. Right now, we kind of travel and resource those opportunities as necessary. From a quantitative perspective, they process somewhere on average. I think we pulled the average the other day. It was like 78 quotes or estimates a week, averaging around, I think, about $3,500 to $4,000. With the low being, you've got several of the under $1,000 quotes, and then we actually had one of our team members put together a $1.5 million estimate within the last couple of weeks. So wide breadth of opportunities there that they're processing on a regular basis.
Cool. It always just blows my mind that we got 3 very different companies that do kind of the same thing, but a little recap. Chad's pretty project focused. My company is a little more service focused. and Tony, you're kind of somewhere in between, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that just from comparing, research and how many service tickets we produce a year. But we have a sales team of 4. 3 of them are processing effectively quotes and incoming requests pretty actively. We have 1, our latest addition is more of a business development. I guess the word you use, Chad, is end user.
Mm-hmm.
And this is funny because we haven't talked about this, but we process about 80 quotes a week, and they average about $3,500.
Yeah. Seems like the math all kind of works out as funny.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
One other thing that I would add in there, and I'd be interested on your side as well, Lars, the one big thing that I would point out in our organization, our sales team is not the project manager and they are not the installers. So there's a designated subset group that is really focused on relationship management and getting the information and pricing to the customer as fast as possible. And then they hand it off to the install teams. So I know there's a mix of various options inside of our industry, but that is the way that ours operates there. And that's how they're able to do that volume, is because they're not also managing the project on the back end.
Yeah. And I think that comes with scale. The natural progression, as a 5-man shop, you're generally, the owner is also the salesperson, right? That's generally how it works. One of the early employees are also the salesperson, and they probably do the installation of that quote themselves. And then just as it evolves, it's either usually somebody that's better with customers, or, a lot of the times it's injury related. Somebody, just can't physically keep up with the demand in the field anymore. But fair, this is kind of the progression it goes. And then once you get to a certain scale, you just you don't have time to be processing quotes and on the tools at the same time, and you just gradually make your way through there.
Yeah,
that's how it worked for us. And I think, like, Tone, I know you got a group of, a couple different brands, because I'm curious about your residential focused brand versus your Bloomington commercial brand.
Yeah, so our residential focused brand doesn't do many quotes. Most of their work is reactionary service work. Our main brand, I was just looking here, we do about 50 quotes a week. Our average is about $6,500 per quote. It's a little less quotes, a little larger quotes. We do a fair amount of electronics work. We kind of split our quotes into 2 types of sections: quotes that are quoted by technicians and quotes that are quoted by salespeople. So the smaller stuff, we have found that there was more process time in having a salesperson go look at upgrading 2 exit devices and then transitioning that over to a project manager and then transitioning it to a tech. So we found it to be very inefficient. So for most of our smaller, like just hardware upgrade type projects, they go right to the technician quotes them. And we've found that to work well. That's actually the quotes where we have the highest success rate on. Because again, they're almost like a service call that a customer just needs a price on. And then anything
that's us too.
Yeah. And then anything that is more of a larger project goes to someone on our sales team. We have 2 people specialized on electronics, a guy specialized on doors, a couple on doors, and then one specifically that targets an end user of integrators. So we sell a lot of electronic hardware to other integrators and do their lock work for them. So we have one person that's dedicated to that customer segment. So
you guys both, it sounds like, focus on whatever, if you want to call them channels or segments or verticals or whatever. Is that why that? That's, I'm mixing through a couple episodes. We got the specialist versus generalist idea here a few episodes back, and we got hunter gatherer, which I think would be a good episode to listen to, prior to this one. But we have, why did you both take the path of having an electronic specialist and a door and frame specialist versus, whoever's next in line gets the next quote?
So
what was your thought?
Ours is kind of transitioning. We're trying to convert everybody into being more of an account manager. So know this customer, you manage our whole array of products across this customer. So we are trying to kind of align people by industry that they're focused on. That is something that is not, like, we literally have just started doing that a couple of weeks ago. But currently the way it's set up is based on.
Why do you want to do that though, Tom?
So our big pitch to our customers is that we can be your one-stop shop commercial security provider.
Right.
So we don't want to be a one-stop shop commercial security provider, but have you deal with 7 different people. So we're trying to make it simple to the customer of saying, this is your representative, this is the person that's going to help you. And then that account manager can work with our technical team or whoever, another salesperson, if they specialize in certain areas, to help them. So the way we're currently set up is just due to the person's background. So our 2 electronics guys used to be electronics technicians and have moved into a sales role. Our door and frame sales quoter, whatever you want to call them, account manager, used to install doors and frames. So that is their specialty, but we are still asking them to know our full array of products and help customers with whatever comes in. So,
right. So let's quote that as a sales quoter. I'm going to use that as a new.
That's a technical Minnesotan term. Yeah, that'll be the 1800th role, and we'll report to Tony.
Well, that's not a role. It is
our sales quoter.
Figure of speech.
This is Tony Hokinson, sales quoter.
So very loose generalities here.
So, and you should know better than that, Tone, because we'll jump all over you. But so moving towards an account manager, I think relationship's the word. Maybe you didn't use that, maybe you did, but kind of that relationship focused person. And I agree with this totally. And then when you run across something you don't know, you work internally with that. But outward facing, as far as the customer is concerned, you have that personal relationship that is going to be far more sticky than being passed around, right? Being channeled through the call center. And I think that's what people are looking for. So, Chad, what's your take on this? You guys do it any different?
Yeah, it's intriguing. So I think the strategy comes down to what is the ultimate objective around a sales team, and so if you're talking about managing sales activities, what is the kind of the mission around that sales team? Are they sales quoters? Or are they? I didn't get that in there.
You can't not say that.
But if you establish the kind of the mission of that team, and we have tried to drive quick response, right? So helpful and kind communication and fast response. Those are 2 of the actions that we talk about in our company all the time, because we want to be able to get our customers' prices fast. That's where people make decisions.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's so we live in a world, and this may not be a surprise to anybody, and I feel like I've said this before, but we live in a world where if somebody needs a security need addressed, they need it addressed quickly. If it goes past a week or 2, then they also may go, maybe it's not that big of an issue anymore, and that attention goes elsewhere. And when we're fighting for dollars from the from a facility manager. I just had this conversation yesterday. If the HVAC goes down or the locks need to be upgraded, they make a decision based off of the comfort of the and it's okay. We can push security a little bit farther, a little bit longer down the line because we haven't had a major issue. Now, things that change that, regulations, government regulations, whatever, major issues that have happened, loss, any threat or anything like that will obviously escalate it. But when they're fighting for those dollars, that's the way that they typically make decisions. So how do you combat that and get them that price as fast as possible? In order to do that, my philosophy is not to lock it down to a certain individual on repeat, because that could create backups or backlogs. So how do you pass that around, but also utilize their strengths? So the way that we operate, several of our account managers have ongoing relationships with specific accounts, and they're not locked to that account, but they have had the most experience with them. So they've got a good rapport. They can manage things. But we don't lock them to the accounts. And then specifically, if it is one of the different offerings that we have with access control cameras versus doors and frames versus lock projects, or an overall new solution, there are different people that have those strengths in handling those from previous projects, and so one account may get shared by multiple account managers to be able to solve that problem, because they are not commission based. They're not fighting for dollars from the other person. They're focused on solving the customer's solution and getting them the price as fast as possible so they can make a decision.
So you're prioritizing speed over familiarity. essentially.
Well, you want it to be done as accurately as possible. So one thing that I was going to mention back that you were talking about, because you said some of your electronics guys were former technicians that are now doing sales. None of my account managers are former technicians. They are all, and I want to say that with an asterisk. My end user rep was a former technician and a training director, and is now an end user rep, but he is focused on the relationship building for end user opportunities. The other three have not been in the field, and so they are reliant upon field information from the technicians and from our project managers to get the technical side right, because their major focus is go find whatever the issue is that the customer's trying to solve, get with our team to find the solution, get them the price as fast as possible, and see if you can get the deal closed.
So if the bulk of your quotes are being prepared by the three non-technical people, what were you looking for? How did you decide these were the right people? Because what is the skill set that you are trying to attract and put in that position?
The first thing that I looked at and this was before Culture Index, this was before I understood really some of that, was I needed somebody to manage the relationship side. So we'd seen this through a couple of different iterations. I did sales years ago very poorly. And the big thing that I could do was go and create a relationship with somebody, understand what they needed. Now, the actual completion follow through, actually getting the proposal to them, was
doing work.
Yeah, well, that was a bit of a challenge, but
that wasn't your forte. Okay.
Finding the opportunity and understanding what needed to be done, I could do that. And so when we inserted a guy, his name is Zach, into a role on the sales side originally, and what I found immediately was he had the ability to connect with people at a high level, but then also stay connected with them to get them the information that they needed. Well, then this is a shocker. Our sales started to increase because we showed up, we connected with the customer, understood what they needed, and then provided them a price very quickly, and then they approved
and then did the work.
Oh. It was this secret formula that we figured out, and so then we actually did the work.
Well, this podcast gets better every week. So show up, give
work.
them a price, and then do the work, and people enjoy that.
Money. And then it repeats itself. And so when we saw that work, to answer your question, when we saw that work, the next individual that I needed to layer into that sales team at that point, which was a person, so to take that and double our sales team from 1 to 2, I wanted somebody that was really good at getting relationships, like driving the relationship side. And I thought, we can teach the information that they need from a technical standpoint, or specifically we can teach them how to ask questions to get the scope. Because all I need for them at that point is to be able to connect with people, talk to people, listen, understand them, grab the scope, and then bring it back. Because if they can get that back into our building, somebody there can help solve the technical side. I don't need them to solve the technical side there. And as a matter of fact, I found that if they didn't solve the technical side, they were actually more effective because they weren't on site for 3 hours trying to solve the technical problem. Right. They were there getting scope and get back.
So are they coming back for every quote? Like, hey, I got this problem, and they're talking to the project manager about everything? Or is it like
originally?
How do they draw that line of when do I need to get technical help versus not?
When they don't know what the solution
don't know what they're doing. Yeah.
And you find some familiarity, right? So the guy, that particular individual I'm talking about, his name's Kevin. And right now he's, got a very good knowledge and understanding of how to solve most of his technical issues, but he still interfaces with the project managers all the time to say, how do you want to solve this problem? Like, here's the opportunity. Here's where I'm at. Any gaps that we have that we need to fill. But he's, a majority of the things that he's touching, he's got significant familiarity with it based off of our go-to-market strategy that he knows what he's going to be selling.
Right. So to ask Lars's initial question a little differently, if you needed a new account manager,
yes,
what would you look for, and what would you, because I've been asked this question by a couple of people recently. If you needed to hire a salesperson, what would you, and I think that's a common thing that a lot of people listening to us are looking to do. I need to get a salesperson. What would be your recommendation? How would you find that person? What would you look for?
Well, I'll say my thoughts. Lars obviously can give some input on it as well. If you're talking about my first salesperson, or if you're talking about adding a salesperson to the existing team, if it was the first salesperson for the organization, I just needed somebody who was tactical, that could put together a quote and follow up with people. I didn't need them to be a relationship builder, and I really didn't need them to be a technical expert. I just needed, at that point, somebody to shadow me to say, here's what we need to quote. Please put this together, get it to them, and then follow up with them in a couple of days to make sure they got it. That's all I needed at that point. Once we established that rapport, then they became independent. So that was my first step. Okay. And I think that's a pretty common thing in a small business where the owner or the operator is the one doing most of the sales. They probably are faltering on following through to actually get the quote done in a timely manner. So that's really just bringing somebody on to do that. If I'm expanding my sales team right now, I'm looking for relationship folks. I don't want a salesperson really. I just want somebody that can be a good listener, somebody that can communicate with people and that people feel comfortable with, as well as somebody that has a good follow through mentality, you know?
And that's again, I think directly related to scale, because that's, that relationship person isn't your first hire. It's, correct. You know, and realistically, you tried it a couple times before you kind of find that sweet spot. I know about 4 or 5 years ago, we tried that and it was just too early. We weren't able to transact on it. You know, one thing I think if I was looking back on it now, a couple of the mistakes or the couple of oversights I've seen, the move from in field to in office. One of the things you don't consider is a lot of the people in field haven't spent a lot of time in front of a computer, right? And it's just like this big magic box, and it's stressful and it's overwhelming for them, completely inefficient. Like it'd be the same way as putting somebody from the field in, throwing them a drill and saying, "Hey, get out there and cut a hole," right?
So what are the downsides, or what are the outcomes of that you would typically see? You take it to somebody that's very technically sound, likes to solve problems with their mind and their hands in the field, and then you put them behind a computer. What experience have you seen with that?
Immediately high stress, not being able to perform at that high level you're expecting. It's, a lot of frustration, the communication, it's like
to me, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, it's, we're just taking a fish and putting them out of water, right? You're taking somebody that's very good at something, and then you're like, okay, so we'll promote them or move them or do something like that and put them in an area they struggle at. So it can be a bit of a challenge, especially with the more experienced people that have, been in the field for 25 years. That's a really hard transition.
Yeah. There's a big change in like your organization habits. You go from having someone organize yourself for you, or organizing your technical workflow and someone else managing your schedule, as opposed to now I'm organizing myself and I need to figure out tips and tricks to be an organized office person.
Well, one of the things that I've found with it is they tend to have a high level of detail and understanding of how to solve the particular problem, but they will tend to under communicate it to the rest of the team.
Oh yeah.
And it's a natural tendency because they are typically self-proficient. So they've been in the field, they've learned to solve their own problems, and they didn't need to explain to anybody else how they solved the problem or what they did to get there. Well, now if I'm putting an estimate together or a quote together, I'm planning a project for somebody, I've got to give a lot of details so that somebody else can carry out the plan that I've developed. And that's typically not their strong suit.
And I would, all through that, like every company and every project is going to suffer the same challenges. I've got it in my mind. If the three of us looked at the same problem, we would come up with three solutions that were a little bit different. Whether it was we turn the wrench to the right or to the left, it's going to be something that is different. And trying to communicate,
you always have to turn it to the right if you're going to tighten it, though.
Everything's reverse up in Canada.
Oh, it's this.
Maybe that's Australia.
If you two were done, I was coming to something great here.
Yeah.
But that's where, one of the biggest challenges is most of us are verbal communicators, and everything, especially when you're old school, everything is I do this, do that. None of it's written down. So one of the first challenges you're going to have is finding a tool, giving them something, whether it's an iPad, whether it's just pen and paper, something to get their thoughts, pictures, this kind of thing. And then you run into how do we categorize it? How do we keep it organized? So it's certainly a challenge, taking it, and that you'll find it's super easy when it's the person that's doing the quote is doing the install. But once you try and move to this quoter, estimator, sales quoter, whatever that's called, to an installer,
thank God you don't have a good memory.
That's quote seller. What, I missed that. Sorry,
a quote seller. No, it's a valid point, right? Because it's not that it can't work. It's not that you can't have a technical person that's going to succeed in sales.
Right.
It's just, here are a couple of things that you need to make sure you cover as you are moving into that shift, because they may not be good at documentation. They may not be good at communicating out the plan, but they probably have a solid plan in their head. It's just, how do you extract it so that everybody else has access to it?
Yeah, we've noticed the importance of professional skills in our technical staff and our sales staff, obviously the sales staff, but we've actually started teaching or creating a professional skills guide. So professional skills fundamentals training. So how to stay organized, little things on how to communicate, and just trying to make sure all of our staff that is talking to customers is communicating in a professional way, organizing themselves in a professional way. Because we've noticed there's so many people that have moved from a technical role into a office or sales role, and they need those skills. So we've taken our best organizer and she's created a technical training or a professional skills training.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask. So is this something you've bought, or is this something you just made?
We have created we started out a couple of years ago. We made like a communication training, and we've broken that down into a professional skills training that has organization and technology skills and communication skills.
So effectively, all in one. Here's how to manage a calendar, and then also here's how you use Office 365 or whatever it is, the process that you have, and then how to actually manage that software.
Yep.
Okay, that's impressive. That's helpful,
and it's something that you would overlook, and then you don't realize. You just don't realize how challenging that can be, and how overwhelming how overwhelming that is for some. Yeah, that's a good one.
And another tip I heard, I've given to a couple of people, and I've never actually done this, so I can't say if it works, but it seems like a good idea. I had an internship in college, and I was talking about our business because I knew my dad was looking for a salesperson, and he goes, "Why don't you hire somebody like that sells to the same customers that you have, but doesn't sell what you're selling? Like, if you're selling to commercial businesses, hire a commercial insurance agent and teach them to sell security. Hire someone that worked as an HVAC salesperson that knows all your customer base, but can sell your product to their existing customer base," which I thought was a really interesting idea. I think so often, like you said, people look for who's my best tech. Let's turn them into a salesperson. Well, they don't have the relationships. They have some of them, but like you said, look for someone with relationships. If you can find somebody that has an existing network of customers that you'd like to call on, that's a great opportunity. The only thing that I think you have to be a little careful of, and I would still recommend this, but our industry is very technically oriented, and what we're selling is not super easy to sell. You're not selling a pen. You're not selling a cell phone. You're selling an array of solutions, and we have had some struggles in the past with outside. We hired someone that was a cell phone salesman before, and it takes a while to learn the industry. And back then we didn't have as good of training programs either, but you have to find the right person that's not just extremely relationship oriented. They have to have the ability to at least grasp technical concepts. So there's a fine line there.
Without that technical support, I would agree with that. I mean, everyone's industry is going to be super technical, super refined, because when you live and breathe it, it's important to the end user or to the customer. They actually don't care. They don't care the diameter of the cylinder or the tailpiece required or any of that crap. That it doesn't matter to them. Yeah, we need to know that. But that's kind of my opinion and my experiences, because I don't know squat.
Right, but you still have to know an array of solutions, right? You have to know access control. You have to know cameras. You have to know exit devices. You have to know doors. Like it's a wide product mix. It's not just I'm selling very narrow and deep. I'm selling very wide. So there's a different level of I don't know if I want to say retention, but like it is a more complicated sales approach than
it is. And that's part of the challenge with that generalist kind of strategy that we're talking about. Whereas if like our latest company, the multifamily company, right? I've taken a different approach. I've hired on a young lady, and she has to. That's one plug I can give for Brevo, right? They have like 10 things they sell. It's really not that complicated. And and why, again, talking about the machine, why do we only sell one product? Because then she only has to learn 10 things, and within a couple weeks, she can really get up to speed on a good variety. She still needs technical support, sure, but keeping it simple so she can kind of specialize on that and speak to it. And then when she gets in trouble and it's outside of her skill set, she just says, that's a great question. I'm going to get back to you on that one. I know a guy that can help me with that. Right.
I think on solving the problem, right, of understanding what the technical side is, for it pretty easily, you could go through and you could use some AI or a Chat GPT or Gemini or something like that to help out with this as well. But you could craft out the template pretty easy for a new salesperson, a new sales quoter. You could say, what are the elements that would be required for an access control system? It's got to have a control panel. It's got to have a reader. It's got to have locking hardware, and it needs to have, electronic unlock capability. So that's going to be different on each application, most likely, but then you're going to have a couple of simple scenarios on the electric strikes that you use. Well, if electric strike isn't a case, then am I going to use this electrified hardware, whatever. But it at least gives a checklist of a formula that you can give somebody that has the ability to communicate and follow a process easily. Do I have a power supply? Do I have a control panel? Do I have this? And if they get stuck on it, then they can take that to one of your technical people and say, this is what I have so far. Here are the gaps that I don't have. Can you help me fill these in? And you can solve that. And you could do the same thing with door hardware and everything else. Is you could create pretty typical guidelines to say, these are the things I need to look for: finish, function, all those types of things. And then they could follow that checklist pretty easily to solve the problem.
Yeah. And I think, going back to the original kind of point of convenience and speed, and I agree with that, Chad, is, the faster you get it out, I don't agree. I know, following the data, the faster the quote goes out, the higher the acceptance rate. That's direct correlation, no question about it. Because we're so knowledgeable on our own stuff, we overcomplicate it, and everything, it depends on this. We got to know is a frame concrete filled, because that'll take an extra hour, all of these details that actually probably inhibit our growth and inhibit our business. As opposed to, you send in the rookie and they focus on, okay, so what's the problem? Like, what do you want to do? Rather than immediately jumping to these product solutions, they're just trying to figure out, all right, so you want the door, you want to go beep and the door opens? Okay, yeah, I can do that.
Well, and here's the thing that I like, which I know we're talking really about how you would get a new person started. And I believe at some point we're going to talk about different activities that you would want to manage. But here's my question. Worst case scenario, and this could be controversial, but if a guy goes out and says, hey, okay, we need to replace a door and frame, and he quotes all of the things and puts in X amount of hours to do that install, and misses the fact that it's in concrete and it's going to have to be cut out, and he wins the bid, what's the worst thing that happens? Is you lose some time on the cutout, and the demo, but you win something. And if you're good at filling that information back in and saying, hey, here's what you missed, here's what you got right, here's what you missed, is it really that detrimental? And what risk are you putting out there? You still got a door install, and you still got all these other things. You missed on the labor a little bit. Guaranteed, if you have a feedback loop, they're not going to make that same mistake again, as opposed to, and this is the controversial thing, is as opposed to you being the expert and knowing exactly all those things, but never getting out there to give the quote, or waiting 2.5, 3 weeks or 4 weeks to be able to give the quote, and you still don't get the job. which one's worse? It's just kind of my theory on it.
Yeah, and I know, Chad, you and I are probably going to be more aligned on this of let's just throw it against the wall and then we'll figure it out when we get there. And Tony's going to be more about, well, we should probably do it right. So
yeah, the only thing I will say,
50-50.
I definitely agree with you in most cases on this topic, at least. But one thing I would be cautious of is we have had issues in the past of quoting wrong parts and having a tremendous cost on excess. Like we have, I don't even want to know how much money sitting on the shelf from misquoted parts. That is just obsolete parts. So I do think we have taken the motto of, I don't necessarily care if the hours are spot on, but the project needs to be reviewed before parts are ordered by a technical person. Like, I don't care if you quote the wrong. I don't want to say you don't care if you quote the wrong parts, but like, quote, get the project mostly close. A technical person looks at it before everything is ordered to make sure that what's being ordered is the correct bill of materials for the install.
And we do the exact same process on our end. So thank you for bringing that up, Tony. A salesperson sells it, they quote it, get all the stuff together. And we have the same issue within the last couple of years. As soon as it was approved, it got sent to purchasing ordered it. And once it arrived on site, we packaged it up and got it ready to go to the job site. And the first time that somebody realized that it wasn't going to work was when the installers were on site opening up the packaging.
Yeah, we had a conversation last year at Brevo. I think you were there, where our sales guy was thinking about basically creating kits for access control and everything, and just have it be a generic kit. This is the rough estimate, okay? That we know that this type of a door is going to cost $2,000 or $4,000, whatever. And then once it's approved, have technical person go in and figure out the right parts and pieces to basically increase that speed to quote.
Yep. And so we had to do something very similar, right? You want to improve or increase your speed to be able to get the pricing to the customer, but then on the back end, from an operations standpoint, how do we make sure that it's right and that we're not absorbing a lot of unnecessary costs because we've ordered the wrong thing and have to redo it? And so now we reverse the funnel because we workflowed everything. We reverse the flow. Once it's approved, it actually goes to the project manager first for review. Then once they approve it, then it goes to purchasing to supply the parts. So just that quick shift, and that was that's a short summary of months and probably years of really mistakes.
But a 3-year process that's been refined. Yeah.
Yeah. So we rerouted that based off of whole conversation. Kurt Graves told me this one time because I was talking to him about how do we solve these issues of wrong parts or whatever. And he said, the best thing to solve those issues is to not let them happen. And it's that simple in theory. It's like, well, the best way to solve any of your issues is to not let it happen. Okay, thanks. But it really opened up this, okay, well, how do we get in front of it? And that's really how we had to start backing the process up to see at what point we can stop it from happening. And that's how we realized that. So we've talked a lot about how you would hire, what that person would do, and all those types of things. So let's say you've hired that person, or maybe you have one or two people. What are those activities that they're supposed to be doing? Do they just sit behind a computer and wait for requests to come in? Are they cold calling? What is the activities of a sales quoter?
So we have one salesperson that is in a business development role, and he's probably the one we have been measuring activities on the most. He has targets for amount of time spent networking. So his main goal is tracking his time spent in front of customers networking, like networking events, going to trade shows, going to just events of any sort, basically time in front of a large group of people. So he has targets. I think quarter one, he was 90 hours a quarter or something like that.
So he has time shaking hands and kissing babies.
Yes. So that was his main measurable. We also track things like quotes sent, quotes approved. I mean, that's pretty basic, but
is that working?
Which one?
90 hours of kissing babies. Like, is it?
Yes.
Do you find is that a value add? Do you think that's making the business better?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, he just started it in January, but okay. Yes, 100%.
Okay. So
that's 90 hours a week?
Quarter. 90 hours a quarter. Oh. Yeah. So it's not a huge number. Like, I mean, large-ish, but it's being intentional about networking is what we're trying to do. Like, so
is that like an hour? Is that like break down to like an hour a day working day or something like that? I'm trying to process what that 90 hours is a very specific number. I'm trying to figure out what it tracks down to.
It might be 80. I don't know. It was around 90. I'm trying to be more vague like you guys here. Now you guys are drilling me on details.
Well, I was just curious. I didn't know that you were doing that. I've never invested in that. That feels more like, I think that's my role, as I spend the vast majority of my time building those. But it's an interesting idea. I was just curious if it works.
I mean, he's going
you're 5 months into it.
Yeah, so he's going to like one of the big organizations we're involved with is MASMIS. It's a school organization up here. So he goes to like 2 or 4 MASMIS meetings a month. He goes to...
What is a MASMIS?
Somehow it stands for like Minnesota Association of School Maintenance Staff. That actually might be it. But yeah, it's school facility managers. So they have 4 local chapters around the state of Minnesota. He goes to every chapter meeting, in which they have a meeting a month. So I guess that's 4 a month. And then that's just one. He does another organization, IREM. So he does some trade shows with them, golf events, networking events. He has a couple of others that he goes to. So. So that's for him, his big measurable is time spent networking with customers. Like, hey, I have this need, come talk to me. More like proactive business development time. And so far, I mean, it's something we have done for 4 or 5 years and got good luck out of. We just started tracking it January 1st. So,
gotcha. Yeah, I've little different direction just about managing our sales team. But it was a conversation I think actually I had with you, Chad, if you remember the amount of quotes you sent out that no one ever looked at. Remember, I don't know how many years ago that was, but it was lots. But we spend all this time and effort, putting together a quote to send it out to a customer. And then, it was something crazy. Like your number was like 50%. Right? Or maybe even less than that. But only half of the quotes that you sent out were even opened. We're not talking about accepted. We're talking about even looked at.
Yeah. Well, the way that, so to kind of clarify that, because it was our approval rate for quotes. So if we sent 100 quotes out, we would get 38 of them were approved. Well, the question that I always came back to was, of the remaining,
62,
42 quotes, why? 62, or whatever. Yeah. Where are they? Who knows where they are? Did anybody ever see them? And so we can assume that nobody ever saw them, or we can assume that they just all got them and they just never approved them, but we don't have any clue. And the biggest question I would say is, if those 62 didn't get opened at all, then that was a lot of wasted time. So how do we get more towards, if we're only going to get 38 approvals, how do we get to the point where we only do 38 quotes? Because that's the best use of our time. That was kind of the way about it.
Yeah. So what we've done is, we're managing our sales team. So we have a target of, I think it's 70% gross margin, which we're defining as just your sale minus your cost of the inventory that you're selling. So it doesn't include cost of labor or anything like that, but that's about it. And it's not per job. It is on an average, because as a salesperson, I understand that sometimes you got to be a little more, sometimes you got to be a little less, sometimes you got to make it up to someone, sometimes you don't. So all that matters to me is that on an average, that's where we want to be. Second thing we're paying attention to is our acceptance rate, which, the in-field technicians go out and say they need something, acceptance rate's like probably 80%, right? It's quite high. But general, like quoting, if somebody calls and says, I need something, our general win rate was about 50 to 52%. So I just did the math. Okay. If let's just say you got 5 salespeople at $100,000 a salesperson. Okay. That's probably not ridiculous. If only half the quotes are being accepted, that means you're spending about $250,000 a year on nothing. Right. So I started looking at that and I was like, well, we can't just charge more to get like a higher margin, right? Can't charge more. We can't force them to accept it. So what can we do to try and increase that win rate? And that's really been our focus. So we had a conversation with my sales team, and I was a bit flabbergasted, to be honest, when I said, when do you send out a quote, you go out to site, you check what they need, all the widgets are on a piece of paper, you send it to them and say, this is how much your widgets are. Mm-hmm. When do you follow up with them to say, like, hey, any questions or like that? Like, oh, we don't, because we're just getting to the next one. We're just churning it out. And I said, so you don't ever? He said, well, if it's a bigger one, or, it's one I thought we were going to get, I might. I was like, wow, this is, so asking the other guys, they're like, yeah, me too. And that was across the board. So sorry, Ton, you want to jump
Why
in
do you
here?
think there is that apprehension to follow up? Like, I feel like that's a common theme that I hear.
Yeah, it's not an apprehension. It's not that word, whatever that word was.
Apprehension, yes.
Yeah, it wasn't a hesitation from them. It was just time. Time management is, they have three quotes on their desk. They got to get to these. They got 40 emails to get to. Like, it's just, they're going to the next. And that was just the whole mentality. And so, my position was, well, do we try and change the culture and change the mindset of all these guys? And okay, now you have to follow up and I thought, what, the easiest step to start with is, does it make a difference? Because before I want to change the culture and everything, does the follow-up actually improve the acceptance rate? So this is generally how I do everything, is let's do a little test. So we developed a follow-up process, and then had somebody just very manually and rudimentary go through outbound emails, and after a week, resend that email. And the first time we did this, so they resent out whatever it was, 80 quotes or something. We got like probably $35,000 or $40,000 in approvals. And the customers were all like, hey, thanks for a reminder. I completely forgot about this. Right. And I was just like, oh my God. So in the first week, we increased our sales by 40 grand by sending out one email. It's like, okay, this is probably worth doing. Right. So we've now
unlocked the magic.
We have, is if we send a quote and then we say, did you get that? And they say no, we send it again, or just say, hey, following up on this, any thoughts or any questions, anything I can help with. So it was a dramatic improvement. So now this year, our goal is having 60% win rate instead of 50. Okay. Which, I think we're hovering in the high 50s now, and it's just improving. But, it was just kind of a mind-blowing, like, I'm almost embarrassed to say this.
Yeah.
But it's had a huge impact on everything.
Yeah. I mean, follow-ups are huge, man. And here's the thing that my experience with it is, sat through all of these conferences and listened to all these folks talk. And I was a firm believer that follow-ups are going to make a big impact, because to your point exactly, the times that we did do it, it was exponentially beneficial. The process that I go back to, or the process that I go back to a lot of times, is how do we systematize this? Because we can do it when it's a problem. We can say, hey, approvals are down, go do follow-ups, and we can go smash 150 follow-ups and get all these approvals, and then everybody's like, okay, let's chill back and relax. I wanted it to be systematized. I wanted it to be consistent week over week over week, and it just be part of our process. Because I think a human nature is, do what's in front of me. I've got this queue of quotes. I'm going to do these. And when I get this queue emptied, then everything is good. And I wanted it to be, do a quote, do a follow-up, do a quote, do a follow-up, have a meeting, do a quote, do a follow-up, right? Just have it part of this rhythm. And it was very difficult, because, I was fighting against human nature of people that didn't want to actually to do that. So we systematized it in a way that it reports back. And I will, I picked this up. I picked part of this up from somebody else. I was having a conversation in a peer group around, how do you manage a sales team? Because I was curious. I thought, our sales team is doing fantastic. We've got approvals coming in and it feels good. But also, I believe that there's some optimization there that we're missing on. And what are the activities that we need to be doing to be able to get the best out of our team? So they sent me this long list of probably 10 or 15 different things that they were measuring their sales team on a regular basis. And I thought it was a little too many. So we simplified it down in our organization. So I'm just going to give you the list of what they are. New contacts. Each of our sales people, our sales quoters, have, I love that term. I'm going to get it in like vinyl and put it in their office. Each of our sales quoters have a specific target every week that they're supposed to have for new contacts. New contact meaning a brand new individual that they have not done work with previously. Second one is appointments completed. And we quantified new appointments by those that are for an intended purpose or a project. So you cannot put an appointment in there to go have coffee with somebody to chit chat about life. It's got to be an appointment for a particular project. Third, number of unopened quotes. So at the end of the week, they report how many unopened quotes that they have in their queue. So again, to what Lars was talking about, we want to drive down the number of unopened quotes because we need people to see the quote in order for them to approve the quote.
Right. And Chad, let me just hop in there for 1 second. And you're able to do that because you use a portal where you don't send a PDF quote, right? You're sending a link and then it reports when that link is opened.
Correct. Yep.
Right. That's
so
okay.
So it's they have to log in to be able to see the quote, and it shows that they've actually viewed it. So new contacts, appointments completed, number of unopened quotes, a number of approved quotes, which is it's one of those numbers that's like relative. It's if they're hitting their gross margin target, then it's probably not really a big deal, but it's just a measurable that builds towards the outcome. So number of approved quotes, they have a margin number that they're supposed to hit, a RMR margin number, so recurring monthly revenue or recurring annual revenue that they're trying to hit. And then most importantly, follow-ups. Each salesperson has a particular number of follow-ups that they're supposed to do on a weekly basis.
Is your margin target, that's a approved margin?
Correct. Yeah. Approved margin, approved
Not
quotes,
quoted.
approved margin. Yeah. So my theory on it, and we talked about this inside of our sales team. If your approved margin target is $20,000 and you can send out $20,000 and get 100% of them approved, by all means get it done. But we know, like, we have a queue, customers are asking questions, and so we're focused on the follow up. We're focused on a number of quotes that a number of days that quotes are sitting and waiting. So we have kind of some measurables on the workflow side of things, but we need to have measurables on the approval side. So that's the way that they're measured, and then they report on that every single week. We have our sales meeting, and they're working and they're showing their progress on that. And it's interesting to me, back to what Lars said, the moment that we started measuring follow-ups and the minute that we started getting a consistent process on follow-ups, and I've got it all charted out. Like, we were doing 50 follow-ups a month, and now we're doing 500. And our approvals, it's the same exact path up, right? We were having good approvals before, but now we have amazing approvals because we're following up more consistently, and we're getting an answer very quickly based off of, if we're off base with our scope, whatever the outcome is, we're getting information on that very quickly, and we're able to adapt to it. So the follow-up is a huge process.
We just did this is a topic that I'm trying to get back to his sauna. This is a topic I'm trying to get better at in our company. We don't do a good job of tracking sales activity. So we just had a brainstorming session on Tuesday to look at some of the ideas we want to start tracking now. I don't have good data on if this is going to work, but one thing we are planning to start tracking is quote created to quote sent time. So when was the quote created in our system? When was the sent button hit? How long are we, like you said, that speed to quote sent is a really big impact. So we're trying to measure how fast we're sending quotes.
Okay. Yep.
Number of quotes created, number of site visits. For me, I don't necessarily care as much about if it's a site visit for a quote or a site visit to go have coffee. I want people in front of customers. So we're going to start measuring site visits. If you don't have a customer calling you, call a customer and go out and visit them and have coffee with them. At least get out, and do something with it. So the other thing that we have always gotten, a lot of our sales team has gotten pride in, is that approval percentage. So we're starting to track, what is your approval percentage of everything you've sent in the last 90 days? What does that look like? We see a good, like, friendly competition between people of, oh, I need to get my approval percentage better, which could elicit a reason to follow up, obviously. So we're going to be tracking that as well.
So I have a question I want to ask you guys. So, because a common response from my sales team is, they are all very focused on having it accurate, 100% accurate, perfect when it goes out, because it saves time in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And my argument is, if you only win 50%, you're actually, well, not just wasting time, you're wasting double the amount, because you're only winning half, right? Mm-hmm. So I dare say the vast majority of people, especially in that early stage where they go from a technician into a quoting role, they know how important it is to be accurate. So when they give that feedback and say, we have to be accurate, or because if not, it takes us twice as much time in the future. How do you guys manage through that conversation, or what's your suggestion for those people?
I think you have to have a full circle measurement tool, right? So we're talking here measuring on sales activities. I do think you have to have a back end measurement. So one of the things we track is the accuracy of scope, accuracy of the allocated time for install, and all that stuff. I think in the beginning, so it's a stair-step process. What is the biggest thing you're trying to accomplish? Am I trying to accomplish speed of price to the customer, or am I trying to accomplish a higher increase of approvals? At that point, those are the activities you've got to measure. So speed to quote. And then if you start to see that your scope is off, well, you've got to find a measurement that's going to level that off on the back end. But it's really a matter of where you're going to put your focus and attention on. So if your all focus and attention is on accuracy of scope, then realize that you're probably in the early stages going to have a slowdown in time to estimate or time to quote. Yeah. So it's really, what are the driving factors that you're trying to achieve with the business,
or make them not responsible for parts and pieces at all. Have them quote with kits and just say, here's your SKUs you quote. Once it's approved, project manager will come in and put the parts and pieces in after the fact. This isn't your responsibility.
Yeah, I think most of these people are going to they've got a high sense of responsibility for the outcome of the project, and they don't want anything to look negative on them, especially if they're the ones that are in front of that customer. So, Lars, we're going to get this taken care of for you, and here's my word that says this is what we're going to do. And then when we get on site, things change and adjust. Well, now I look like I'm an idiot and I've got mud on my face because I don't know squat. And that's a challenge. Let's call back. Then that's a challenge for that person to be able to push through that, because they don't want to look like they are the failure in the process.
Yeah. And that's, now that we've gotten to the scale and we've kind of gotten through that introductory kind of sales model, and now we have those kind of account managers, that's the challenge we have is, that responsibility and that emotional impact, because, we go back and I try and speak logical with our team and say, okay, we did 100 jobs and we have 2 warranty calls, but it's like the emotional impact of those 2 that went wrong are so impactful versus the other 98 that the 2 is the only ones you remember, right? It's like, it's the poker player that only remembers the hands they lose, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so showing the wins and then unpacking what worked with those wins is a big factor for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've talked through the hiring, the activity, like the day-to-day activities, and then the measuring the activities of a salesperson. Does that get to answering some of the questions that you have, Tony, or we have more to?
Yeah, the only other thing I was interested to learn about is, what do you guys do from a cadence with your management of your sales team? Lars, do you have any sort of like a sales meeting? Like, what do you do to keep the salespeople motivated, on task? Is there any sort of a sales huddle? What do you do with that for your team of 4 or 5 people?
Oh yeah, we have a weekly sales meeting. So we have a weekly all hands meeting with all hands, and then the weekly sales meeting is with the sales team run by the sales manager. We have a management meeting as well. So those are kind of the main 3, and then Matt, who's in charge of operations. Well, he's in charge of everything, but he.
So what do you
know,
what do you use that sales meeting for? Like what is the purpose of the sales meeting? How does that help you?
Yeah, most of it is reporting. Most of it is talking through some of the projects that you have on the go. We include our operations people, so they know of anything that's coming down the pipe, so they make sure we have manpower for it. And then operationally, how is our purchasing? What's our backlog? Any of the new products we're looking at. It's more like an operations focused meeting for sales after we've gone through our sales metrics. And it's more just focused on, bringing awareness so that they have to prepare a little bit for the meeting.
Yeah.
Because, often you get so caught up in the whirlwind of what you're doing. This is just something that's consistent, same time every week, that makes you kind of focus like, oh yeah, I gotta look into this. And it just kind of resets you. So that's the main topic of it. I'm actually going to reach out to Dave, our sales manager, after this, because I'm curious. I haven't sat in one in months probably. So I'll see where we're at and tell them to listen to this podcast.
We have a weekly sales meeting with our team every Friday morning, and that is a wrap-up reporting meeting. And they basically start out by going around and reporting on the metrics that I just went over, and then we jump into a really simple agenda. What were the big wins for the week? So they come in, and very similar to what Lars was just saying before he left about being positive, is what were the wins for the week? What good meetings that we had, good opportunities that came in, whatever. Things that I'm stuck on is the next thing that they'll come around and share is I'm stuck on this quote, stuck on this project. I can't get an answer from this vendor or whatever the case may be, but things that they're stuck on. And then what winning looks like for the next week is the final thing, is what am I planning to do for the next 5 days coming up? And the reason that we do it in that order is, and end on that, is because I want them to be thinking on Friday morning at 9 a.m. what they're going to be doing Monday at to get their week started. I found when I first started getting involved with our sales team that I was asking the question, and justifiably the expectation had never been set, but I was asking the question on Friday, what are you planning to do next week? What are your proactive activities? And they would say, "Well, show up and manage."
I like that.
And that didn't sit well with me because I felt like we needed to get more in a proactive mindset. And so that was just an intentional shift that we had, is I want to know what your next 5 days look like. What's your plan? What's your strategy? What meetings you have set up? And if I start getting answers on a regular basis of I don't have any meetings or I don't have anything going on, then that's a cause for coaching and improvement, because that's a proactive manner. So that's the cadence that they have. And then on a monthly basis, they report their previous month's status to the rest of the organization as to the amount of approvals that they had coming through.
So on that Friday meeting, are you reporting on the Friday before through this Friday? So the last 5 working days, or just what you've done this week?
The 5 working days of the current week. So the kind of concept was if they can get and hit all their measurables Monday through Thursday. Friday, by the time Friday hits, they should be fine, which it's funny. A couple of our guys this morning, because today is a Friday that we're recording this podcast. So I attended that meeting this morning, and there were a couple of guys that were just shy of like $100 of hitting their target. And they're like, we're going to go get it. Like, it's not a problem. We're going to go get it. And they just sent a text message a few minutes ago that they hit their target. So cool. That's something that they're driving towards. And so it's, Friday by noon, and they have hit their target for the week. And so now they're in a planning mode for the next 5 days.
And you've found that agenda, it seems very simple, but you found it to be successful?
We've been running it for about 8.5 or 9 months now. And when we first started, it was a little sketchy. Not really sure. Not everybody was really bought into it. They felt like it was a kind of an extra added unnecessary thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when we started getting in the green every week for approvals, then they have all been very excited around it because it works. There's a rhythm, there's a cadence to it, and it's consistent. So
Cool.
Yeah, it's a thing that I've found value in. Back early 2024, I started having some questions around it. Are we getting the most out of our sales team? Do they have a clear path of what winning looks like for them?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just started nosing around through the sales department for about 2 months, just asking questions, having conversations, see what was going on. And it became apparent that we did not have a good plan to what winning looked like outside of just one big number. And there was different paths to get to that number, and it was inconsistent. And that's when we kind of started doing the research and learning all this. So it's one of my little kind of, I guess, aspects that I'm involved with now on a weekly basis. I get to sit in that hour-long meeting and hear about what's going on. It's very informative, and it gives me really a good pulse on where we're headed from an organization. So we haven't implemented a sales manager yet. It's that responsibility kind of falls up to our operations manager. But we also have a veteran sales staff that we manage with these measurements. So the management side is not a big role currently, but as we expand that team, obviously that will be a requirement that happens.
Cool. Yeah, we started a sales team meeting. We've kind of started them off and on and never found a good cadence and rhythm that has been effective. And I think it's because we were getting a little too high level and not tactical enough on activities. So that's really helpful.
Yeah.
Did you guys like share a word calendar or something? Or because you've used the word cadence more in this episode than I've ever heard you say in the last 10 years. It's like you guys are synced up on the word calendar, and cadence was last week's word. So
I like cadence. It's a consistent thing that happens regularly.
I've heard him say it now, and now it's in my head. So I just,
monkey see, monkey too. Yeah,
parrot effect.
It's funny. I mean, I can tell you exactly why I use the word cadence. I am terrible at consistency with a lot of things. Like I like to start new things, but I don't like to maintain and manage them. Yeah. And
never noticed.
Shocking. So it's very important for me whenever I start something new that if I think that there's going to be value in, how do I get it, put a cadence to it that it's hard for me to break.
So you have to be intentional about it.
He just tried to insult me, but his internet broke up at the same time. So that was well. Lars, you want to try go with that again to insult me?
No. I'm going to insult Utah instead. Governor of Utah or whoever's in charge of Utah, get it together, man. Your internet sucks. Whoever's in charge of Utah.
Shots.
Godly.
Okay. Lars, before your internet goes completely out, it is your responsibility to come up with the topic for next episode. And so the floor is yours.
I thought this was for terrible topic Tony's job. Okay, do a little ad lib for a minute so I can pull up my list. Because I've got it here. I just have to pull it up.
Pull up Tony's terrible list and select one from it.
Yeah.
Again, as a key takeaways.
There you go.
Just having some key activities to track in your sales team. Figure out what's important. Figure out what the sales team is going to make them successful. Get some buy-in. Get some ideas from them, and have some sort of sales measurables you're tracking. Was my key takeaways. Lots of good stuff there.
Yeah, sales quota was a great takeaway for me. Definitely. The
follow-ups was definitely I know one that I've talked to you guys both about before, but I think there's a lot of pushback on, like you said, I want to go do this quote. I want to do this quote. Well, I think you said something to me a week or so ago, Chad, like why spend so much more time on new quotes when you could just put a little bit of extra effort into the existing ones you've sent and get a higher approval percentage. So
yeah, for sure. The one thing I'll tell you, I'm pulling up my chart right now. September of 2024, we did 130 follow-ups. In the month of April, we did 553.
Wow.
That's a massive difference, right? And it's stacked month over month ever since then. But our approvals and our actual sales, we are Let me tell you this while I'm looking at it real quick, because I think we are up over year, nearly $1 million in approvals. So if that tells you there is a direct correlation to those activities that we've been doing and the results of it.
Cool. Lars, you've had a week to get a topic.
Okay, so well, Utah willing here. I'll see if I can get this out. I am in between between two topics, and I'm going to ask you, not that it's going to have an impact on my decision here, but I'm going to float them out to you because I think it's time we dove into the weeds a bit here today and some tactical things. I want to go a little high level, a little higher level. It's a toss-up between top 5 career moments or top 5 books that have impacted you.
I would say career moments. We've done a book. We did a book. We talked about some books a while back. We didn't do a whole episode, I guess, but we did end a episode on top books. But hey,
top 5 career moments. All right. So that's going to be collectively.
Well, that was my input. Yeah. As we know, Lars typically doesn't listen to me, so he'll probably pick the other one. But
that's my intention was to go the opposite of what you guys wanted to do.
Nice.
Out of spite, but
Utah's I'm excited for top 5 books
today. So,
is this going to be top 6 or top? Like, are we? Because we've done this top 5 thing before and ended up with like either 3 or 12.
Top 5's catchy, so that's why we say top 5. But we can really talk about what you want.
Lars is all about the flair and not really the substance. So
what I want to really dive into are, what are some of the big wins you've had?
Okay.
How did you get there? How did you, what it might have been, who were the hires, or what were the difference makers in your career? We've been doing this for about 10 years. We've had a lot of things that have gone well. We've screwed up a lot. We had a whole podcast on the things we've screwed up on.
Yeah, that's fair.
But let's take the other angle. What are the things that went well and kind of talk through those? So, Tony, I'll send you some of mine so you can at least have something to say. But
wow, I think I vote that we change it to the top 6, and that way we all have to come.
How about no? I got a better idea. We each do our top 5. We each do our top 5. What is Lars's top 5? What is my top 5? What is Chad's top 5 for each of us?
All right. Well,
is Chad? Are you going to have 5? Okay, I think that is great. Can you land this plane for us? Because honestly, I've got about 3 more seconds of internet before maybe Utah governs me again.
Well, one big shout out to Lars. He took time on his vacation to be able to really pull things together and have a quality recording
yes,
here.
We're so blessed.
My microphone. Look at my stupid white cord. Yes. I always give Tony hell for his cord. Now I got a dumb white cord on the mic. Yes. Come on, Lars.
Nobody really noticed it because it blended in with your white shirt, but now that you brought it up, it's actually terrible. Unlockedpodcast.com is the website. It's got links to all of the places that you can subscribe. Really, we love to get feedback from you. If you send us a message on LinkedIn, if you send us emails, we really appreciate that, and it helps us craft the direction that we need to continue to bring the podcast in. And it's been really neat to have conversations with people. I know you guys have had the same, where through conversation, I just a couple of days ago was having a conversation with someone at lunch, and they said it's really neat to hear the perspective that you guys have because you're in it right now. You're working the business right now, and it's really cool to see that and understand how that individual from a vendor side can continue to be good resources to a company like ours. So, we started out this whole podcast philosophy around documenting our experiences from growing and scaling locksmith businesses, and it's continued to evolve in, I think, good information for people that we didn't really intend it to be, which is neat. So not only business owners, but managers, employees that are interested in I know several of my employees listen to the podcast, and then they come talk to me about the things that they're seeing and how it's being impacted in our business. But again, vendors can understand maybe how to better communicate with locksmith companies that they're working with on a daily basis as well. So hopefully a good resource for you. We're going to continue to do that. We've got some really cool episodes that I think topics that we've got coming down the pipeline. So stick around for that. But make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode that comes out mostly every Thursday morning sometime.
Or if you are in Utah, we will print off the transcript and mail it to you because I know you don't have internet.